Hello. Hmm.
Hi Jessica, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me and Tiffany.
Yeah, we're psyched.
Yeah. Woohoo.
Hi everyone.
Hi Tiffany.
Hi, how are you,
Hello.
Sia?
I think we can go ahead and get started, and then I think a few more people will be trickling in. So thank you everyone for joining us for our fourth Aspiring Talk on College and Careers. We're really glad you're all able to join us. My name is Julia, and I'm co-coordinator of Aspire in the Community Talks with Michelle Garcia Diocampo. We're really fortunate to have Jessica and Tiffany join us for this Aspire event. Aspire is a Boston-based nonprofit, and then we seek to empower Asian American women through education, mentorship, and identity development. And we're really grateful that Tiffany and Jessica are going to share their experiences with us. Tiffany and Jessica, do you think you could briefly introduce yourselves, and then afterwards we could head into Q&A?
Tiffany, do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much, Aspire, for inviting both Jessica and I to speak. It's so awesome to see all you ladies here. So, I'm Tiffany. I'm a rising junior at Williams College, majoring in economics, and I was born and raised in Southern California, so that's where I've been right now in quarantine. And right now, I'm also a Girls Who Invest summer intensive scholar. And with that, it's a 4-week residential training program that was also virtual because of COVID, where we learned the foundations of finance, and then we're matched with a 6-week internship in asset management, because the goal of the organization Girls Who Invest is to get more women into the asset management space, and their amazing goal of getting 30% of the world's investable capital run by women by 2030. So that's been what I've been up to. Just a quick intro.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica. Thank you Aspire for having me. I'm currently working as a foundation assistant in philanthropy for a grants management organization named GMA Foundations. I'm currently based in Boston, Massachusetts. Actually came back during COVID times, not because of COVID, but it was just so happened that I came in at the right time. I have been living and working abroad for the past few years, so I'm excited to share more about my experience there. I majored in economics and went to spent my undergrad years at Smith College. I think you're on mute.
Oh, yeah, Michelle. Yeah.
Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. We're so happy to have you here. So we just want to kind of talk about room rules, and then we can start to get this conversation flowing. So we're fortunate that we have a nice intimate group. It would be lovely if everybody can please turn on their webcams so that we can have a sense of community in our room. And we'll start off by asking just a couple of questions to our speakers. But other than that, please feel free to just go ahead and unmute yourselves and shout out any questions or comments that you have. And also please feel free, if you have any tech trouble or anything like that, or if you're just shy, you can just type in your question or comment in the chat, and myself and Julia will keep an eye out and we'll read anything out loud. So please feel free to speak up. This is your space. So to get started, Jessica and Tiffany, would you guys like to talk about how, as young people, you started out in the workforce? So what did you do as a young person to get those internships, to get those jobs?
Jessica, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. I can't believe it's been 4 years since I graduated from college, but I would say, interestingly enough, I got a good number of my internships and jobs through my experience gained from side projects, passion projects that I started up on my own. I was actually a fashion and lifestyle blogger back in my undergrad years. And during that interesting time, I garnered a lot of experience in social media, content creation, communications, and I was able to, transfer that onto my resume and have worked at various marketing agencies in the country as well as abroad. During my undergrad years, I actually started out working at investment banking firm as my first internship. Then went on to working at another marketing agency before, like a wealth management firm, and that was in Shanghai. And then being back home, I worked at a social media marketing agency in Chicago. So that was like the gist of my college years. And then my first year out of Smith, I spent my first few months exploring working in fashion, because it was an industry I've always, had a curiosity about and had passion for. Then I realized the experience I was getting wasn't something that I was looking for. I wanted something that was more challenging and actually experienced like a pre-quarter life crisis. So I quit and decided to explore some more and took on various temp customer service and admin jobs. And through those experiences, I realized that, wow, I'm smart and capable and am adaptable. And I realized that oftentimes we do have a lot of the skills that we can, transfer from one place to another. And that belief has allowed me to explore many industries moving forward. But I can continue on before that. But those were my younger years, because after that, I actually spent a year teaching English in Korea, and I worked at various jobs in retail and hospitality, working as a working holiday visa holder in Australia. And then after Australia, I came back home.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jessica. That's so rad. So I'll backtrack all the way actually to 12th grade. So that was my early start to getting a feel of business might be for me. There's a program at my high school where I was able to actually be matched to an internship in a local area. So I worked in real estate, and specifically in the marketing division. And through that experience, I always try to create a rotational internship out of something that was siloed off into a specific department if possible, like read a culture, see if that's something you can do. So I looked around, there were real estate agents that were popping in and out, and people working in accounting or in legal. So I just asked the peepins, like, hey, do you have a recommendation of a book I can read or how I can assist? So that's how I was able to get a feel of maybe that was for me. And then from there, I went off to Williams, and I know that finance and business was something I wanted to consider. So a lot of what I did to get to my internships was I tried to avoid using the word networking. So I say relationship building. So I talked to a lot of alums in our system because we had a really strong alumni cohort to see about maybe some opportunities they had. But before I even got there, it was a lot of relationship building, hearing about their stories, how they got to where they are. Did their major even correlate to their work? Which a lot of the answers most of the time was no. They majored maybe say in like physics, but then they went off to do something in art or even world travel. So through these experiences, I ended up with a trade financing startup my freshman year in San Francisco. That was a great experience. I think I pitched startups to all freshmen because it's really hard to get an internship right out of your first year. And I got to see the product management side, the finance side, the legal side, of course, the tech and the coding perspective of it, because there was a lot of a technology component to it as they were growing and leveling up. And then for my sophomore year now, I'm in the Girls Who Invest program. Realized throughout the path that maybe investment banking wasn't for me, and I wanted to try out asset management because I could explore the different asset classes. And through that program, like I said earlier, they had such a strong mission of getting women into the industry. And it was nothing like for this past 4 weeks to sit with a room of 60 plus women all studying finance together. It's not something that I commonly see. So that was pretty empowering. So now into the 2021 summer internship recruiting program, probably for asset management as well. So that's a little bit, but there's definitely more to dive into later on.
That's awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. So our chat is going to be kind of informal Q&A. So ladies, please feel free to speak up and ask your questions. So I'll get us started. So the both of you have done some pretty diverse work. And so maybe for folks that are entering into the workforce, and it seems like there's so many different opportunities, how did you find out what was your niche, like what you really wanted to do?
It took a lot of exploring for me, really. And I'm still exploring to this day. So I'm currently working in philanthropy. And how I got my job, interestingly enough, was that it was because of my work with Project Voice. And Project Voice is a passion project I started off back in November 2016. I was a podcast spearheaded by voices of women and non-binary folks of the Asian diaspora, learning about myself as an Asian American woman. And it grew as a content creation platform. And this year I wanted to try something new because it wasn't only the knowledge sharing part that I love about staying connected with my Asian American community, specifically my Asian American women community, but also thinking to myself, what are the other ways I can give back and forward to my fellow colleagues? And this year I started up my own scholarship program because I was just curious. I was like, can I do this? Like, these are some challenges that I've always wanted to take on, similar to like how you would take on a project that you're curious about at any workplace, right? And so during my job interview process, job search back few months ago, I brought this up when I was trying to, interview for GMA Foundations, my current employer, and they were really impressed by it, by the fact that like she cares, that they saw that there's a cause that I care about, that, there's a genuine interest in something that I want to work in. So to answer your question really is that I try to it's an ongoing journey, and that just because you're interested in something, you stop there. Sometimes like you'll be interested in this one thing, but then in a few years you'll want to grow in another way. So for me, it's just being open to all the possibilities and just pursuing your curiosity wherever you are. Either through your side projects, which are just as valid of an experience, as well as your professional experience at work.
I would definitely echo that sentiment of being open to exploring anything. I guess like the motto that I try to live by is I'm willing to try anything at least once in my life. So that was kind of the path that I took in order to figure out what I might be interested in. So in my earlier parts of my high school year, I was a journalist. So those were the 4 years. How I got to that was because I liked writing from more of a personal standpoint. So I wondered how I can combine that interest with my love for serving others. And through journalism, you're building that public forum for others. So I thought that would be a start. So that was how I found that interest, right? I meshed some of my skills that I had and some interests that I had and see how we could put those together to find that specific interest. So that was how I found like the high school journey. And then in college, I knew that I grew up in a very entrepreneurial business mindset of a household. Both of my parents are restaurant owners, and I had people in my family that were out doing real estate and other different business ventures. So hearing their spiel of you can be the CEO of your own world, or you could be the future like Asian American like woman and be a CEO of your world, having that type of motivation was what kept me going. And from there, it was seeing, okay, I really enjoy spending my time with people. I liked serving others and helping them grow and mentor others till they can build a path and really leverage their potential to get to where they want to be. So I took that and I did a lot of mentorship in my high school years and my college years for our first generation college students. Those are more of my extracurricular elements. Then specifically for my internships, I knew I wanted to be in the financial services sphere, but it just depended on what asset class that would match my personality, but also my mission of hoping to create impact some way, somehow in finance. So I figured through asset management, for example, maybe like an endowment or a pension fund, I know that I'd be helping in the future one day if I could run a fund. Say for those like firefighters and teachers, or for an endowment, maybe someone needs financial aid, just like I know that I did during my current educational process, I can help them get there too. Or even if someone wants to retire in the future happily, I know that the research that I did in that process can help them get there. So that's how I came to that kind of conclusion of finding those little niche points.
Thank you both so much for sharing that. That's really helpful. Tiffany, I know you were touching on this a little bit earlier as well, but it's very hard to do this without relationships. And what are some suggestions that both of you have for building relationships with different people, especially in this virtual world right now?
Yeah, I can go ahead and get that started. I think even whether it's a physical, like in-person world or a virtual world, I think research is really critical. I think even before you speak to someone, if you're curious in, say, art or you're curious in design, take a look at their portfolio beforehand, take a search through like LinkedIn if it's like public, or even if they're Facebook or their Twitter. You can get a feel of personality traits, or if they're very outgoing, or they're very passionate about sharing their work, or maybe they have some cause that they really care about outside of just their workplace. It's gathering those little data points as you would if, say, in your educational system, you'd be creating an essay of sorts, right? You're building this like mind map in your head of the person that you hope to meet in the future, so that when you meet them, it isn't transactional in any way. Like I try to avoid that. Like that's like an NO. I'm avoiding like a transactional relationship. So that's one way for sure of building research. I think another thing is when you're talking to the individual to actually intentionally listen, deeply listen to the points that they're saying and not trying to kind of silo off what you're picking up. Like for example, during times of like either panic or like you're really looking for something, right? If you really want an internship, then you like zero in on the conversation. You're waiting for them to mention something about a job opportunity. Try to stray away from that. And I look for, say, it could be as out there as like, oh, like their favorite pet or their favorite food. There's bound to be some sort of pinpoint where you can relate to that individual, even if it's super hard to find one right away, or maybe even intimidating. So those are like the 2 points that I try to work off of when I'm meeting new individuals, regardless of whether it's virtual or in person.
Yeah, those are really good points. How do I follow up with that? Um, I forget that a lot of things I do nowadays are networking. Like I'll have calls and meetings every week or so, getting to know different people, but it never feels like, the stodgy image of what networking is supposed to look like. For me, it's genuinely getting to know people and what they like are doing now. Like, I mean, I'm again like just pursuing your curiosity and asking them what they do. And I believe that oftentimes the people I meet, they love talking about these things. They love talking about what they do. They're as and their passions. And for me, it's like, don't be afraid to reach out to them, like online, especially during this time. I like speaking to the current times now, with how difficult it can be to find a job or to, get an internship. What I did before the official job search was that I went on LinkedIn and I looked up people that I thought I would like to get in touch with, either recruiters or just people working in that industry. And I would message them and be like, hey, I think what you're doing is something in my interest, and here's my experience within this industry as well. Let's connect if you'd like. And I've had a good number of folks who like are willing to take the time out to, talk. And so I would say that in terms of like COVID times, but like networking in general is like what Tiffany said earlier. It's all about relationship building and staying connected with these folks. I got a freelance business development job just because I was connected with a friend of mine who started up her own skincare company a few years ago. And she was like, hey, like, I've been noticing all this work that you've been doing through your other projects. I think you may be a good candidate for this. Like, would you be interested? And just get creative with like how you network as well. Like, and I just go on social media and sometimes add folks and like start messaging them like, hey, I think, what you're doing is great. And I know I'm being a bit repetitive now, but honestly, just trying to echo what Tiffany said. Mm-hmm.
I think a quick add to that as well. I think a lot of people like to hear their name being said, one. I think the second thing is they love hearing themselves talk about their passions and their projects and all that they're doing. So whenever I meet someone, each person has their own way of tracking who they meet, because you don't want to forget about them, right? They touched your lives for a reason, so maybe keep them in your lives, So I create like an Excel sheet of sorts. Some people use Notion, some people use Airtable. They're my top 3, though they can get crazy if you can't find a way to merge them all. But I try to keep in contact with at least the individuals once a month, or I'd send an email and say, hey, I found this article that I think you might be interested in, or I came across this like Twitter post that I think you should absolutely check out. It's a way of building that personal connection so that you know that they aren't like this one-time person that came into your life.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely do that, like knowledge sharing, or like whenever I stumble upon a piece of content that makes me that reminds me of somebody. I'm like, hey, I thought of you when I saw this. Just scheduling calls, check-in calls with your friends and acquaintances like during this time helps a lot too. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And actually, if I may add on, you guys had made me think about how I had learned that, networking is really awkward and it feels so transactional. But like you guys said, we have to think of them as like building real relationships. And in fact, another way that I had heard about networking that I really, really appreciated was to, rather than thinking of it as just networking or transactional, think of it as you're building your mentorship team. So I think we have in mind that it's like our mentor is like one person, is like our go-to, but it's like, no, there is a lot of communal learning that we can get from one another. So if we kind of learn like what different people have to offer and learn what are their different strengths, whether it's like someone can help you with finances, someone can help you with getting internships, someone can help you getting a job, and like keeping track of all those people and like bringing them in to help you is like a really cool way of thinking of networking as like team mentorship. That's like mutually beneficial. So I had learned that when I was in college myself, and that was just kind of something that was on my mind after hearing you guys talk about how you think of your networks.
Yeah, I actually wanted to add to that, like, because as the founder of Project Voice, and we just launched our scholarship program, we actually have a mentorship component to it. So having mentors on board and, connecting with our aspiring podcasters / scholars who we have been mentoring this month actually has been a very rewarding experience on both parts. Like you said, it's not transactional. It doesn't feel like that at all. I mean, given the fact that this program is, our mentors' way of wanting to just give back to our community and help out in their own ways with their skill sets, and it's more like it's not like a one-way thing with networking either. Like you said, it's mutually beneficial. Like both sides are like hopefully getting a positive experience. It feels like we're having like a positive experience on both ends, and we're all learning from each other on like what our strengths are and what our rooms for improvement are like, and like how we can just connect with each other during a time like this, and how we can support one another as a community.
I'd like to keep this as intimate as possible. And since we're such a small group, do you think that for our participants, do you think you could briefly introduce yourselves to your speakers and say maybe your names, your schools, what you're studying or what you're interested in studying, and any potential interest of yours? If you're all interested, then I can read your names off the screen, and then maybe you could go ahead and introduce yourselves. And I apologize if I mispronounce any names. Kasalia, could you go first?
Hi, I'm Kasalia. I'm a rising third year at UCLA studying neuroscience.
Charlotte, could you go next?
Hi, I'm Charlotte, and I just graduated from SCAD, and I'm an animation major.
Lillian, could you go next?
Hi, I'm Lily. I'm a rising junior at Williams College and a chemistry major. And some of my interests are kind of looking into possibly consulting within like the chemistry world, as well as research or possibly med school, kind of, in the air, so.
Awesome. Ellen?
Hi, I'm Ellen. I actually found this opportunity through Tiffany, who is my mentor through a side program. And I'm an incoming college freshman at Scripps College, hoping to study cognitive science and public policy.
Awesome. Trong?
Hi, my name is Sharon. I am actually a senior in high school, and I don't know why I came across this event on Facebook, so I just thought that I would pop in. But I don't know, it would be such an intimate meeting. So.
Well, welcome. I'm so glad that you joined us.
Thank you.
Noel?
Hi, I'm also actually a senior in high school, but I'm thinking about applying as a global health major in college, but who knows?
Yay, welcome.
Um, Michelle, you were also in global health as well. Yes, awesome.
Yes, I was. I had a career path quite similar to Jessica's, where I ended up doing a lot of different things. But yes, I started in the field of global public health. But this is awesome. Thank you guys. And hopefully the convo can kind of tailor to what you're interested in. But to kind of like fit the climate that we're in right now, so everyone is here because they want to get their foot in the door. They want to get those awesome internships and job opportunities. And those are really challenging, whether, you're a current student or whether you're post-grad. And then, of course, now it's even harder to do so because we have opportunities like this where we can network, but it's not as if we can go out, to lots and lots of networking events and, other in-person opportunities. So given the current climate, what do you guys think that people can do, to develop their careers to get to the next step if things are not, if there aren't so many opportunities in school, in person, in the workforce? Any guidance for that?
Sorry, can you, so given during the current climate, you were asking about any advice on how to cope with the pace of the job process.
Yes, sorry. Yes, exactly. So, how do you, exactly, as you had said, how do you keep up with like job market, things like that, given the current climate?
Okay, I'm gonna try and make this applicable to our audience. Notice that a good number of folks in this group call are in the sciences, and I unfortunately do not have a career in that field, but I would presume that a lot of you have more time on your hands now, which is great because, sometimes time is seen as a luxury. So definitely take advantage of that when you have it. Think about how you can upskill yourself during this time while you're searching for a job, because the job search is a very slow process. So it'll take time to get, the emails, the follow-ups, the interview calls. But in between, you can, take online courses. You can start your own projects so that you can upskill yourself in your own ways. It doesn't have to be, I like to stress that, like, your experience doesn't have to be an internship or a job to be considered legitimate or valid. Any type of experience you've gained throughout your years in college, throughout your years, away, like everything counts, and definitely capitalize on that. I would say again, networking and getting in touch with folks is another piece of advice there. I'm trying to see. So, I am on social media pretty often. I like to connect people on that. There's a lot of amazing resources out there. There are existing online networks that you can tap into. When I was in high school and college, I wish that there was something like Asian Creative Network or Asian Hustle Network or Subtle Asian Networking. I don't know if you've heard of these groups before, but those are amazing groups to tap into and learn about what other people are doing out there. There are existing databases in these groups where people are trying to help each other out, listing all these opportunities where you can apply to. LinkedIn also have various groups on there as well that you can tap into. Depending on the industry that you're in, there are most likely online groups out there for you to search on.
I definitely agree on the online groups. The ones that Jessica just mentioned are so great on Facebook. And I think knowing your audience is so crucial. So if you want a little bit more of a formal conversation, or depending on the industry, and it could be a little more corporate or a little bit more conservative or formal, then LinkedIn know that the audience over there might be sounding sort of like that, then when you head into Facebook, it can head into a more informal mentorship territory. So a lot of the groups that you see in Subtle Asian Networking or Subtle Hustle Network are great to check out, because these are people who already created mentorship programs within the website itself, and they're different groups. I think another thing which I really enjoyed doing in the more in-person world, but now you can understand the fact that because you're online, there's a lot of ways you can tap into groups that you might not have been able to tap in before. For example, I would go onto Eventbrite and find conferences related to global health policy, or I'd say design thinking, or finance for the modern woman, or just anything that I'm curious about. You type it into the Eventbrite bar and then find conferences all across the world. So I don't just silo myself off into the domestic sphere of conferences, because now I don't have to travel to another country or whatnot to be able to access these conferences. They're also affordable for the college student, because we're in this space right now where the economy is pretty rocky and volatile. You can meet all these individuals and build connections from people from all walks of life. There are high schoolers on there. There are people in their 50s. There are people who are retired and then pop back into professorship and heading into academia. So through these different conferences, you can gain a lot of knowledge that you wouldn't have typically gained, say, in a textbook, or say in just a single physical event where you can only meet so many people at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of Googling. I work in philanthropy, so I was like, where are the Asian Americans working in philanthropy, or women of color in philanthropy? And I searched that up, and it just so happened that there are websites and networking groups of those kinds, right? And I have to echo what Tiffany said. Eventbrite is such a great source for networking events. I've definitely had been offered an internship through meeting someone at one of these Eventbrite events, actually. So, fun fact.
Wow, that's so awesome. And those are some really great ways, especially now that all these events are becoming virtual. I think that on that note as well, Jessica and Tiffany, could you speak about some of your experiences in working remotely and working from home? And do you have any advice on that and how the environment has changed for you?
Yeah, I can go ahead and get started on that. So I'm currently interning remotely from home. So I did both what was supposed to be a residential component of learning the more classroom curriculum in a more online lecture setting on Zoom. And then I'm also doing the full internship now in real estate private equity online. So I think the number one tip that I have is over communication. Like, you're going to hear that a lot, but I think you just need to over communicate, because someone out there will tell you when you've been emailing too much. They'll be the one to be your radar. But with this gap of not being in person, where you can simply tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, I have a question, or hey, is this supposed to be due at this time, or whatnot, just send those emails, set up a quick call. If the email component, will take too long, just pick up the phone and call someone, especially if you're remote interning right now. I think another thing, it's really hard to build virtual relationships, I think, in the same way that you can in a personal relationship, because reading body language is one of my key ways to figure out whether someone is like comfortable, or someone is wanting to jump to a new topic, or you can figure out a lot from how they're framing themselves. So through that, I hold a lot of different coffee chats, conversations with people outside of work. When I know that it's like outside of work hours, I avoid talking about work to the individual, and I try to find more about their personal lives. So that's been helpful in kind of building that community that you would have easily done in a personal world, but now in a virtual setting.
Yeah, I actually love working remotely. And I've done it in different contexts, where when I was living abroad, I worked as a digital nomad, freelancing as a business development specialist, content creator, podcaster on the side. So there was a lot of communications involved in that, and that helped me prepare myself transitioning into my current role now. So yes, communication is number one. It's huge. Like, I remember when I started out just working at an internship or a job, I would feel more hesitant about approaching people for questions, but I realized working online, it's so important to ask questions when you have doubts. Like, even if you're not, like, whenever you're not 100% on something, just ask. And I think that is what has left, I think I've left a good impression on my colleagues for that reason. Like, they'd rather know that, I care about something, and that's why I'm asking them all these different questions, versus just assuming and just going off on your own assumptions. And So I think like when you're working online, a lot of communication needs to be done. Like it feels more like it's doubled. What else? In terms of creating a rapport with your colleagues, it's difficult because you're just more siloed into your computer, your screen, doing whatever work that you're supposed to do. It's also important to try and connect with your colleagues or your supervisor. So at my company, what I love about it is that they have such a great work culture where they try to get these staff involved in different ways. Sometimes we have like really cool work events where we get to like just talk about the books or content that we've been like checking out, or like we have these 3 p.m. check-in calls daily where we just talk about random stuff just to get to know each other. And I haven't met most of my colleagues in person since I've been onboarded. So for me, it's just taking the initiative and be like, hey, do you want to meet up for lunch? And schedule a Zoom call then. Or or just reaching out to them one-on-one, checking in with other people is really important right now. And I would have to say like that also means like whenever you have staff meetings or meetings with other colleagues, just every impression you make online is the only impression they are gonna have. So like you try and speak up when you can. Like if you're more on the introverted side though, it's totally fine. Like you can still be intentional and impactful with things you say even if you still don't have much to say, or you would prefer to just be more concise with what you want to say. So yeah, I think I'm veering off a bit, but those would be my pieces of advice.
Also, to add to that, Zoom fatigue is so real when you're online. So understanding self-care and taking care of yourself during this time is super critical, not being too hard on yourself, because the whole world is going through this remote world. And in this space where maybe it could be negative or it could be, a tougher time to swallow and understand, take time for yourself to either self-reflect or to be introspective, to think, what do I want to gain from the experience? And then how can I create that world even in a remote or virtual space? So I know that when it's after 5 or 6 p.m. of the workday, I have 2 monitors right here next to me. I would shut it off. All lights that are like technologically related are all off. I would go downstairs, change into a fresh pair of clothes, and that's my way of telling my body it's the end of the workday. Because when you can't separate between the two, anxiety can increase, or you just won't have the same energy at work. And because it's only, like what Jessica's saying, it's only a virtual world, they only know you from what they see in this tiny screen. Try not to like show that like you're really tired or that you aren't paying attention or give off the wrong impression, because you probably are, but it's just you're fatigued from such long hours on the screen.
Yeah, I have definitely felt zoomed out. I could see all the memes that come along with it. And also just remembering about, in terms of like working online, presentation again is important when you're working online. So whenever you're on a Zoom call, make sure that your background is appropriate, your workwear is still appropriate, because that's again the only impression you're gonna leave with your fellow colleagues.
Awesome, thank you guys. And you brought up some themes of self-care, which is really awesome. On the personal growth side of things, in order to do all of the things that we just talked about, right? Putting ourselves out there, networking, we need to have self-confidence to be able to do that. So for people who especially may not have the experience of putting themselves out there, what kind of suggestions do you guys have maybe to build your confidence, your self-esteem, so you can put yourself out there and you can, unashamedly market yourself to get those opportunities that you want?
Well, I would say that it helps reaching out to people one-on-one first, and then branching from individual interactions to group ones. Just because if you're in a group and then you've spoken to a few of those already, they're like your allies, right? And I think like when you're at any company, it's nice to have folks who like already know who you are as a person and can understand where you're coming from and so on and so forth. So building that confidence is an ongoing journey, and I feel like I'm on that journey as well. And I'm not always 100% confident in every meeting I go in. Sometimes I'm like, the only Asian American woman in this predominantly white male workplace, like, okay, how do I navigate in this kind of space, right? And so sometimes I just go for it. I'm like, practice makes perfect. I'm just gonna speak up and see, what they think about. And just reminding yourself that there's a line between the personal and professional, and it's important not to take things personally when you're working. And I understand oftentimes we let ourselves be really caught up in the work that we do, sometimes to the point that we let the work define ourselves, when in reality we should really try to unlearn that belief where it's like, no, my level of productivity, it does not define me, so I know that's like definitely something that we're trying to encourage here. But really it's just practice makes perfect. And if you don't get it right the first, second, or third time, you just keep going, you keep trying. And the first meeting you say one sentence, the second meeting a few, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think having a really, really strong network of women like we see right here is also amazing. That's how I keep myself going. I think I have some of the individuals in this call, some of my like ride or dies, greatest friends ever, and they lift me up, especially when I'm having a rough day or I'm going through a tougher recruiting process. So I think having those individuals to cheer you on, or you're more maybe the introverted side, talking to one individual, just like what Jessica's saying, and building conversations with them, and then maybe even testing out some conversations are like uncomfortable territory, like putting yourself out there, right? And maybe you're scared to do it with a brand new employer, brand new individual. Test it out with your friend. Say something like, hey, can I practice like a quick interview with you? Or can I just practice pitching myself, right? Personal brand is so important, like what we mentioned in the comment section, if you guys look below. So just practicing it with someone, or even if it's too intimidating to practice it with a friend, that's okay. There's a notebook. There's a pen and paper. We can go old fashioned. I love doing that so much. So sometimes I just write to myself all day, every day, until I get to a point where I find something that's like miraculous, or maybe just something that I want to share with someone. Then I can spark the conversation with someone in an easier manner than walking in there stone cold being, oh God, what do I say to someone? And like what Jessica's saying, it's a journey. So don't be too hard on yourself. It's okay to not feel 100% all the time. In fact, if we did, then are we really human, I guess? So yeah, enjoy the process, I think, also, because I know that a lot of individuals feel so much anxiety during either the job finding process, the internship finding process, research, school, whatever it may be. So just be understanding to yourself and also others.
Yeah, that was actually a good leeway to the question that was asked in chat. Should we discuss more about what was brought up? Was like, I see Sophia saying, I'd also like to add that since we're becoming a much more virtual world, accelerated by this pandemic, but even before it started, employers may also research you. If they Googled your name, what would they find? In your spare time, you could create your own portfolio, and so on and so forth. Oh, is that a question towards us, or is it just like a piece of advice?
I was just adding on to what both you and Tiffany was saying.
Cool.
Thank you guys for those tips. I love them. And I feel like I can ask questions all day. But I want to check in with our participants. Do you guys have any specific questions you'd like to ask the presenters?
Hi, I think I have a question.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Hi, no worries. So I was thinking, well, since I'm in like the arts, right, I think it's really, building your brand is a really important part of that. And I think a lot of artists really struggle with doing that, actually. So I was wondering how you guys find your ways to like build your own brand. What kind of inspires you? Like, what do you do to find that like really niche part of yourself that I think you kind of touched on it before, but like maybe in a more like artsy direction, or like in a way that can build a website from, that kind of thing?
Definitely. Building a brand is such a fun but also challenging part of trying to, create your own personal brand online. Again, this is something in the works for me as well as a content creator. But I would say that, like, as millennials or Gen Z folks, like, we're very tech savvy and we have the skills to like create the image of ourselves that we'd like for others to see. And I'd say that you should definitely capitalize on that, because oftentimes the tools that we have are free, like the social media platforms, I would say the websites, you would have to purchase the domain and like the subscription to the website. But again, like creating that portfolio is important, and I would, like, as a creator, like finding that aesthetic and asking yourself, how do I transfer that aesthetic, your personal brand, visual associations to your platforms? And what does it look like in other mediums, right? I would say connecting with other folks who you personally relate to as a creator, as an artist as well, and seeing how they create their own portfolio or their own profile, right? And that maybe you can sort of get inspiration from there, and maybe that would be a starting point for you when you're trying to create that personal brand online.
Yeah, and I think Michelle also just mentioned it below. I think knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, I think if you are able to specifically say what they are, it's similar to the phrase which I picked up with emotional intelligence. If you are clearly able to say what you're feeling or what emotions you're having at that moment, do the same for the skills and weaknesses. And then also what your specific interests are, if you can specifically pinpoint what they are and say it in a way where it's understandable to all audiences, whether they're beginners all the way up to when they're advanced. That's a great way to showcase yourself as an individual and your own brand, because when someone's looking at you from many different angles, it can be like, oh, right, I remember that Charlotte was an amazing individual who has this skill, this talent, and they were able to showcase in XYZ way, whether that's through your mannerisms, your way that you conducted yourself, or maybe your method of matching up the modern world to the work that you create and you can showcase in your portfolio.
And also to add on here, Jessica, I think you had mentioned before that it's not just jobs and internships that make you who you are, especially as a professional. So I always think about what like passion projects do I have on the side? And that's always really empowering for me, because there are sometimes things that I want to take the lead on at work, but there's other restrictions. So if I come up with an Asian American mental health project just on my own time, that's something that's totally reflective of me and my work. And then those are your self-led projects that end up being totally, demonstrative of what you can do. So like thinking of what's passion projects, what small projects you've led are some really cool things that you can showcase that's unique about you too.
Yeah, really good points there. Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you said there. So it helps in two ways, where like the company gets to see what your values are, what you care about, and then you get to like measure or like compare, like, oh, is this company a good fit for me based on what I care about, like outside of work. And it's just a great bonus when you find that some company has the fit that you are looking for. And this speaks especially true to artists and creatives out there, because your works draw a lot from your experiences in life. And so what you do outside of your work, just in real life, should reflect who you are as a person, as a creator.
That was a great question. Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you, Tiffany and Jessica, for your great answer. We have time for one more question. So does any other participant have anything else they would like to ask?
I'll ask one. Um, so, well, I'm not sure how like things are gonna look next year, I guess, but how would you say you should network with professors and such?
I can go ahead and start with that. I think when it comes to college and building those connections with professors, for me at least, I go to a liberal arts college, which means it's a smaller, more intimate space. All liberal arts colleges in the US, they're mostly undergraduate focused, meaning they don't have a graduate program. So you can really build those intimate relationships with your professor. So for me, it's just actively just sending an email, reaching out, or even if you don't see anyone like in their room and they're not really busy, just knock on a door and say hi, especially when you're in a residential college space. And creating a conversation. It could be anything. It could be asking them what they're interested in their research, what they're passionate about outside of work. You notice something on their walls. That's a pro tip I always use. If I notice something really interesting on their wall, I'll ask right away. Or I notice something interesting on their desk. What's the history behind it? What's your story about it? I think professors are also human beings. And I think when you're a student and you're walking as a freshman, I know I looked at these professors and I was like, oh, they're like the holy gods. We can't touch them. we can't go near them. They're the sources of all knowledge, but they're people too. They have families, they have life stories, they maybe have non-linear paths. So be willing to ask them anything and anything. They're there to help you and support you and help you grow. And if you're learning from a more remote setting, which I know I will be for the upcoming fall, I think it's similar to how when you're going through the job process or even just meeting new individuals in a virtual world, reach out for a coffee chat or reach out for what in college office hours and set up those appointments and ask the questions that you have on your problem sets, ask the questions you have on your essay, or even just ask like, what's up in the world that you live in that I might not understand because I'm in another side of the world or another side of the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree on your point about, seeing professors like as these holy gods, because I remember as an undergrad, I used to see professors like they are like untouchable beings, right? Perfect beings, but they're not the case. I'm actually still in touch with some of my high school teachers, my college professors, and I even have them as friends on social media, which is quite funny. Like, because it's a very humanizing experience to see their social media updates, right? With their family, their vacations, and so on and so forth. So I would say, though, during my undergrad years, I wish I had taken more advantage on the access of resources that were provided to me, including these professors. And I know that Tiffany and I come from small liberal arts college backgrounds, which allows us to have more access to these professors because we're a small campus, less students to deal with. But our advice, I would say, is applicable to any university or like academic campus setting, or just, I think first things first is it just requires your initiative, for you to take initiative to reach out to these professors and these teachers, to like ask the questions and to connect with them. I like to have these check-in sessions. Sometimes I'll go to their office hours and I'll go to them and like ask them about certain questions I have about an essay or so. Like, honestly, I feel like students don't take advantage of office hours enough. Like and I know it's intimidating sometimes to go to professor one-on-one, but truly, I think I've gotten better grades on my essays because I went out and reached out to them. So yeah, definitely reach out to professors, taking initiative, and like to share more about like another side project that I've been working on. Like, I also write poetry. I know Tiffany and I were talking about how we love poetry and we do that as a side hobby. Sometimes like after having graduated from college, I will reach out to my English professors, my Asian American Studies professor, and be like, hey, this is what I've been working on so far on Project Voice, on poetry. Like, I'd love for you to check out on this. It's just so that the professors know like what you're doing, and they would just get back to me and be like, hey, this is amazing. I'll definitely share it with my students about your mentorship program or whatever your work on. Or like, they'll be like, have you considered applying to these positions, opportunities, and because these professors have just like a plethora of resources behind them. And it's just, allowing them to see you more as human beings, as well as allowing yourself to see them more as human beings.
I think also just building those connections with your professors, especially, for example, for like Jessica and I, right, or Asian American women. And with that, maybe in your faculty, there's like an Asian American woman out there. And specifically for me, I can think of a couple. They're in all different departments, whether that's women, gender, and sexuality studies, Asian American studies, English. Reach out to them. And it doesn't even have to be about the work that they do. It could be simply as like, what has been your experience as an Asian American woman in academia? Or what was the path that you took to get to where you are? Was it difficult? Was it easy? You can even ask questions depending, like read the room and how personal you want to get. Was it difficult, say, to have a family while juggling all different lives? What does work-life balance look like as an Asian American woman? Are there certain value systems that I had to adhere to growing up? Was it hard to either, whether you followed or you broke free from the different parental expectations you have? I think when you can build those deeper connections with your professors that maybe share the same identity with you, it is so, so enriching and powerful, especially in your undergrad years.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. And, also on the teaching side of things, a lot of, instructors really want to know that they've had an impact on you. They want to know that you're doing well. And sometimes they're scared of you. So instructors want to know, they want to know what you're up to and how things have been. And they are always more than happy to help you out. Whether it's like letters of rec, just to get you your foot in the door for that first internship. Instructors love to help. So I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. So if it's okay with everyone, can we take a quick group picture?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Alrighty. Put your faces on, people. Let's see. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right. And just one last thing. So thank you to our speakers. We're so happy to be able to learn from you guys today. I hope that our participants were able to gain some awesome insight from you guys as well. Our speakers have so kindly provided their contact info, so please feel free to reach out to them. As for keeping in touch with Aspire, our Asian American Women in Leadership Conference coming up this fall, and we're looking for volunteers to help out with everything from programming to speaker outreach, marketing, finances. So this is also a great resume builder. So if you want to get involved, you can contact us as well. And so here is our links, our email, and our social media handles if you'd like to get involved.